So welcome back. My name is Gerren McHam with the API Innovation Center. I serve as the Director of Government and External Relations, and I'll be leading our panel discussion this morning. But just to quickly recap, Michael Wall and his team did an amazing job putting together a really thorough, detailed report about what would happen with the right investments and strategic focus in pharmaceutical manufacturing, specifically in terms of API production and investments in active pharmaceutical ingredient, and then also in terms of advanced manufacturing technology. So really to underscore that, we want to be focusing today on job creation, really bolstering our regional growth, and also positioning Missouri as a leader in innovation. Now, and we'll skip this next slide, I know what I look like. So in the recommendations for the impact of the report, there's a couple of things I wanted to highlight. First, in the report, you'll see kind of three key areas that we kind of hone in on at the end. Really, first is going to be the continued investment. And so, again, the state has already contributed $10 million towards API innovation research that the API Innovation Center was lucky enough to receive. Right now, we've already seen a return on investment. We've already mentioned before the Biomap award of $13.9 million. So the direct impact, a lot to deal with the investment of the state and the federal government recognizing that this model could truly work. Also, investments from philanthropy will be great as well. So at some point today, we'll be passing around a collection plate. So if you want to invest in the API Innovation Center, now is your time. Strengthen partnerships. So again, Michael talked a lot about how working together as an ecosystem, connecting K-12 with post-secondary education, industry, us working together across the spectrum would be what leads us to the impact that we saw before. And finally, continue research. The report, I like to look at it as a baseline, something that we can build from, to grow from, and so we can continue to measure our success and progress over time. Now, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel this morning. So when wanting to talk about the aspects of the report, we wanted to really hit home on local and statewide economic development. We wanted to focus on current manufacturing and future, and also workforce development. And so that's why it looks like we're trying to put together our own basketball team up here of five great expert panelists. But when you're dealing with the complexities of all those categories, you want to make sure you have kind of a diverse perspective. And so without further ado, I'll go ahead and start to introduce our panelists and then get into our first question. First, starting at the end, we have Kevin Cahill. He's the Vice President for Strategic Initiatives at the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. He spearheads the partnership's effort to create and sustain comprehensive regional economic development strategies through initiatives such as the first ever combined St. Louis City and County Economic Development Strategy from 2017 to 2022. He previously held the roles at Edward Jones, CEO of the St. Louis City Competitive Alliance, and the Special Assistant to the Mayor of St. Louis. Subash, Alias, the CEO for the Missouri Partnership. He directs the efforts to market Missouri as the destination for business investment. In addition to attraction, expansion, retention, he's involved in looking to advance advanced manufacturing and transportation distribution industry clusters throughout the state. Formerly with the Pittsburgh Regional Alliance and Greater St. Louis, Inc., or what's now become Greater St. Louis, Inc. Becca Ryan, the grant manager from the Madison County Employment and Training. She oversees the Gateway Apprenticeship Hub, promoting workforce development across healthcare, education, and bioscience sectors in partnership with industry and post-secondary partners. Karthik Raghavan. He's the co-lead of the Sentio Biosciences and CEO, focusing on developing and manufacturing complex APIs and drug products. Actually has 2 approved drugs and 1 ongoing FDA approval right now. And Lynne Morano, she is the co-founder of GCM, looking to do renovation starting in 2025, right?
Yes.
And so they just bought the Bissinger plant in 1600 North Broadway. Her background includes active pharmaceutical ingredient manufacturing and CDMO services from her former company, Moderator Pharma. So with that, I want to kick things off with a kind of general question, starting all the way at the end with Kevin. Just your initial thoughts on the report. Again, we talked about the economic development findings, the impact of workforce development and the roles of reshoring pharmaceutical manufacturing to Missouri. Just your initial thoughts, what kind of jumped out at you about the report?
Actually, what jumped out at me was the sheer impact on the region from an economic standpoint, and the opportunity that we have. If you think about it, Biosciences, BioSTL, and all that started 20 years ago, and we've gotten to real critical mass. And you think about the plant science opportunities out at the 39 North Innovation District and where this effort can be over time. And so that was my initial reaction to it without having gone very deeply into it. I really was impressed with what you see as a longer-term vision. And that's what you need to have is a broad vision that's not just a small subset of what this could be. Think about it as what it really could be and the impact on the region.
Great. Subash?
I've got to echo Kevin's comments here. We have, Kevin mentioned these strong industry sectors that we're already strong in. I'll add, because we cover the whole state, animal health on the western side of the state, and ag tech too, which is sort of throughout Missouri. So API is kind of another possibility to have kind of a double down on one particular cluster. So my initial reaction, honestly, was excitement, because now let me add in geospatial as well. So as a group that markets the state, and we work to promote Missouri for new business attraction. If you go to our website and you go to the website of many other states, it will look fairly similar. We're strong in this, you name it, they're all saying the same thing. But we can't say, what we can say in Missouri that other states can't are things like API, animal health, plant sciences, geospatial. And I would say API is one more thing that we can add as far as what is specialized. What's somewhat generic for us, which we're strong, manufacturing, distribution, life sciences is strong here too, but a lot of other places can claim that too. But this, to me, was excitement, and that we can really have a solid niche and a targeted focus on it.
Yeah. And Becca,
can I add another bit?
Yeah, go for
just
it.
Because I have the floor for one moment, I've got to commend Anthony and Kevin and you all for bringing on Aaron Willard. He's a good friend. He's I don't know how to define him. He's kind of advisor right now to the governor, but he's former governor, chief of staff, just an absolute superstar of an individual. And so that doubled down on the excitement too by seeing that Aaron is going to be part of this exciting initiative.
Yeah, we're great to have Aaron join a part of our team. And so speaking of job opportunities and workforce development, Becca, what jumped out at you for kind of the workforce development angle, like the projection of new jobs within the region?
I think to me what really stuck out was not only what we're seeing in the future, but what we've already been working on. I mean, St. Louis has been building a foundation for a project like this for a long time between the work of BioSTL, all of our major universities in the region, not only on the Missouri side of the river, but also over in Illinois, to really foster this so that, as we see the projected career growth opportunities, we're gonna have a pipeline of people ready to go because we've been building out that foundation for so long now. That I think, we're at that point where we're really gonna start seeing that return on the investment that's been put into this industry in the region.
Yeah. Karthik?
Yeah, just for me, the most striking thing is awareness building. Just anecdotally, we've been manufacturing API in St. Louis for 15 years plus. Almost every pharmaceutical forum I go to, have gone to over the past years, the very first question is, why are you making stuff in the U.S.? That's the very first question that comes up. It's not cost competitive, there's too many regulations, et cetera. So I think this turns the argument around, and starts to build awareness on the economic case. The national security, health security case is there, but that case comes to the surface only if there's a acute issue like COVID or something like that. Otherwise, people don't really think about it that much. But the economic argument is an important factor, and I think this helps kind of build the awareness.
Yeah. Lynne?
I think going after the pharma industry in and of itself, there's a ratio of when you look at other industries on the direct and indirect jobs, and pharma offers a 1-to-5 ratio. So for every one job in pharma, you bring in 5 other jobs, because there's ancillary services, or that people have, they have kids and you need other things. So it's going to be a growth in pharma, but it's going to be a growth across many things. And, seeing the presence and the outpouring that we've received when we were looking at other cities versus coming to Missouri, and specifically St. Louis, the outreach was there, the investments that's already been put into the community, and having the workforce available is very attractive. That you don't have to come to St. Louis and then worry about building it. Like if you look what happened to Philadelphia when they went after this industry, or Fisher, Indiana, you see the impact on the environment.
Right.
And the growth, and the explosive growth, because after you bring that in, are there going to be vendors and ancillary companies that come in to support this?
Right.
And then one of the things I was even thinking about is going after those collaborative relationships that you already see, and seeing the presence. We just recently went to a meeting out in San Diego. It was a bio investment conference, and we saw Maggie there.
Yeah.
From Greater SDO, because there's a lot of states that have a presence. They have a booth to attract those biopharma companies to come. And Maggie was there, discovering and looking at it, and I believe Justin from BioSDO.
BioSDO, yep.
Yep, and they're going to have a booth there next year.
There you go. I mean, that's kind of a great testament of just kind of having a presence there in the front of businesses, so you can attract them here. You made up a good point about what brought your attention about St. Louis being a destination, and so I want to kind of swing back over to Subash first. And I know you do, and your group does a lot about trying to recruit businesses to St. Louis and to the state of Missouri. Could you kind of talk about what are some of your strategies that your team has used, and how can that be used in promoting the activities that we're seeing with the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry?
You'll have to bear with me on this answer. It's not an easy task. So people think, just why don't you pick up the phone and call companies and have them locate, in Missouri. If it was that easy, we would set up phone banks around the world and do that, but it's not how it works. So we have kind of 3 program areas that focus on this, and they kind of represent the sales funnel. So marketing is at the very top, the middle band is business development, and then project management. And so in marketing, this is where we use our outside voice. We have to compete with 49 other states and countless countries for this investment. And Missouri doesn't have the brand equity that some states like California, Florida, New York, or Texas have. So we really have to scream from the rooftops about what we have available in Missouri. So we do that through social media, some earned media, paid media, anything we can do to get the attention of decision makers to look at Missouri. Business development, a little further down in that sales funnel, is more of that kind of the sales activity, the one-on-one engagements. So you mentioned the bio conference where you saw Maggie.
Yeah.
That is what we would define as a business development activity. So going to conferences, building relationships, having one-on-one conversations, and talking about Missouri to these individuals, and that takes, that can take years to develop. Doesn't happen overnight. And then in our project management area, that's the very bottom. This is once a company has said we are actively looking at Missouri or another state, then our team kicks into high gear and delivers like concierge level service to a company. And I think some have experienced something like that, right, from our team. So Deborah is one of those individuals. She leads that team. So anything we can do to win within our power, we do it. So if it's finding real estate, if it's identifying partners, if it's the financial incentives that we have, it's kind of everything related to that to try to win, to put ourselves above other states.
And Kevin, just coming over to you, I mean, part of what Subash was talking about is going to entail collaboration and partnerships across, public and private. And so, kind of with your team and just in general, what do you think needs to happen across the public and private sectors to kind of realize what the report is suggesting with pharmaceutical manufacturing?
Well, I think I'll give you a good example. It's pretty recent. St. Louis, it was the recipient of Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration Build Back Better Regional Challenge. And that was in 23. And that took a collaboration and partnership. Greater St. Louis and our organization, STL Partnership, led the effort, but we had to pull together countless organizations in order to make that attractive to EDA. There were 529 applications nationally. We were one of 21 regions that were selected as winners of that. And so we named it the Tech Triangle, with advanced manufacturing at the top, but also including geospatial and biosciences, which also included ag tech. And I think API was a part of the overall effort, and that was important. And these partnerships and collaboration between government and the private sector are what going to drive this opportunity. You heard Subash say relationship building is over years, and we've got to get the name out that this is an attractive place. Think about what's happened in ag tech and plant and life sciences. There are probably 1,000 plant scientists here in St. Louis, but that was because of an aggregation and creating the magnet for that, and people seeing the opportunity from Germany and South America and others who are now starting to locate here. But it's a collective effort, and you can't do it on your own. And so being a part of these collaborations is what's going to drive the opportunity.
Yeah, and part of the collaborations, when we talk about with partnerships, you have the economic development arm, but you also have the partnerships you need to have within, training the workforce to actually be able to fill these jobs. And so, Beck, over to you. Kind of, what is your team doing in terms of, building in the biosciences space for this talent pipeline, and kind of how does that tie within what you've seen in the report today?
So we're living in this fortunate time where workforce development funding that comes from the federal government doesn't cut at the river. I represent the first workforce development initiative that is by state in the St. Louis region. So we don't have those typical boundaries where you can't leave your individual workforce development board. We fortunately have a regional workforce development board where all of our directors get together and talk. And through that, we've developed partnerships with four-year universities on both sides of the river that are gladly sharing curriculum, because these initiatives aren't going to be solved by one university competing with another, or the four-year universities competing with the community colleges. It really has to be everybody working together, sharing curriculum, so that all of the individuals that we're training up to be skilled in our region have the same standard of skills. I mean, if you talk to the employers in the region who are giving direct feedback on these training programs, they're all asking for the same thing. And in general, they tend to trade employees around back and forth between each other. So why would we want one individual to be trained to one standard and another to a different standard? And so the collaboration between, within academia, which I think can be a real challenge. They are all competitors in a sense. And enrollment is a challenge for all of them. But sharing that curriculum, I mean, it's everybody eats. Everybody's getting the same benefits out of working together. And we're training a cohesive workforce that's all at the same really high standard. And I think that those collaborations are why this work is so important. If everybody's competing, nobody ends up happy out of it, you know.
Right.
And at this point, we get to work with Sentio, and we get to work with, you know, others in the Cortex innovation community, but also large international companies like Thermo Fisher and Pfizer and Bayer, and train up a workforce that is at a standard that really highly represents the St. Louis region.
Yeah, and I mean, developing that workforce and developing that pipeline, again, you want to make sure there's a job at the end of the tunnel there as well.
Yes.
And so you mentioned your partnership with Sentio, and Karthik, I know you've been doing a lot of work, and you've been doing this for a while here in the industry in St. Louis. Could you, just kind of switching gears a little bit, could you talk about some of the opportunities and challenges in working in the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry? Because I think it's great to have that appreciation when we're having this conversation about investments into the space.
Yeah, sure. So I think to kind of go back maybe 20 plus years, or maybe even longer than that, there's been a constant erosion of manufacturing API and drug product. You know, our focus is on API, but there's been outsourcing and offshoring of this infrastructure over the 20, 25 years time period. And as a result, a number of things have happened. The infrastructure has been decimated in terms of the entire value chain, whether it's raw materials, whether it's equipment, utility manufacturers, it's workforce, it's actual facilities, et cetera. So one of the challenges has been to, as companies like us, is to try and work within those constraints to build and operate manufacturing facilities in pharmaceutical. For example, most of the equipment we buy from overseas. There are very few equipment suppliers here, likewise for components, parts, et cetera. So those are some of the constraints that we've had to deal with and face, and that comes with risks, shortages, support, et cetera. On the people side, talking specifically about St. Louis, I think with the erosion of manufacturing, the skills has been quite a challenge. So we over time had to learn how to set up a adequate training program that's supportive of people working in pharmaceutical, especially using advanced equipment, advanced processes, et cetera. And so the investment that we've had to put in and the kind of training programs we've had to implement over time has been quite a learning experience. Working in a regulated industry, what it means to work in a GMP environment, what it means to work in an automated environment, and introducing all the new concepts in pharmaceutical. So all that has been quite a challenge, but the investment in people, I think, is at the key of all of that. Until and unless we have a vast pool of well-trained and well-experienced people, this is going to be a scale-up is going to be a challenge, because you can scale up facilities, you can scale up equipment and all that, but to piggyback the resources, I think that's going to be a key focal point in terms of looking ahead. I think another thing is kind of to turn the argument in terms of what's the competition doing in other countries that we can either learn from or adapt to. I don't know how many of you have been to, pharmaceutical plants in China, India, et cetera, but a few key things. They have a very secure raw material supply chain. They make most of the raw materials that they need for their internal manufacturing and consumption. Same with equipment, same with components. So they have a fairly secure internal supply chain. Their costs, they have cost advantage not only because of cheap labor, but also in terms of regulations, in terms of availability of skilled resources, et cetera. So that's another lesson to learn in terms of making sure we invest back on resources. The third aspect, I think, is an important aspect, and it was touched upon, I think, in your presentation, was entrepreneurial mindset. I think that is very important in terms of scaling up beyond kind of a few products, et cetera. There has to be across the board, whether it's on the government-public partnership on the government side, on the manufacturing company side, et cetera, or API Innovation Center, et cetera. There has to be a certain amount of entrepreneurial spirit to put it on steroids at this point, because the challenge is there. The competitors are there. They're not going away. They are building infrastructure just like we are. They are filing new generic ANDAs as we speak. I know companies that have targets of 70, 80 ANDAs per year that are overseas. So the competition is intense. So we need to look at that as well and see what is it that they're doing that we can either replicate or do better here. So I think I see those three as pretty important challenges.
A couple of things you pointed out that I kind of want to highlight on is basically there's a risk and challenge in working in the pharmaceutical industry. There's also a need for critical investment, whether it's in people or in technology. And so Lynne, a question for you. Kind of what made you want to get into this industry, especially here in St. Louis, and building a new fill and finish plant through GCM, but also could you speak to ways in which you may be looking into that investment in new technology with advanced manufacturing technology as being kind of a baseline to build from?
One of the attractions to St. Louis, as I mentioned before, was you have an established pharma ecosystem. And I think it's like one of your best kept secrets, and that was one of our attractors. The other reason is that there's a very low cost of living here, so we can give a fair wage and not an overinflated wage versus like if we were to go into the Northeast and have the challenges of like state taxes and stuff. It's at a much higher rate. So I think from an economic development standpoint that when Missouri's going out there with what you were saying is to sell the fact that land is available, it's at a lower per square, a lower per acreage cost than in other areas, and that your state taxes aren't exuberant. And I know Missouri Partnerships have worked with us and reduced like property tax abatement, and there's other modalities of tax abatement that become attractive because you will then get you'll get state income taxes from the employees, so it kind of works out with a wash system. So I know that was one of the reasons why we came to St. Louis, and something we've been working with the university, with WashU, with the API development, and being able to take the API that is produced here locally and then put it into production under continuous manufacturing. And I think, with what he was saying is that we're going to have to compete with China and with India because they do have an infrastructure that they are building. What we need to focus on, how do we drive our costs down and keep our costs down? And that is through the entrepreneurial innovation that we need to do in the manufacturing equipment. How do we make it faster than they do within our regulations? Because we are within a highly regulated environment and pharma. And keeping to those standards, it's a barrier for us, but it's also a barrier for them. So if we can work with the universities to make the equipment within our facility, there is a company called Nephron who went to the local university of South Carolina and said, we need a filling line. We need you to make it. So they had the university make them a filling line, and they are going to now sell it. So it's a U.S.-based, made and subsidized. And subsidization also does come in, because if you look at any of the companies in India and China, they're all government subsidized. So we need the help of the government to bring into onshore API production, onshore the finished product production, because if we just get to API, we haven't satisfied the end-to-end to solution, which is a patient. We've got a patient on the end of this that we need to get those drug products to. So not only do we need to work on API development, but we need to work on the finished product development. And the best way we can do that is to drive down our operational costs so we remain competitive with those abroad. And I think the only other competitive thing that I say would be helpful is if we can get the government to start having the FDA go back and do on-site inspections to block those products from coming in, because since COVID, they started doing virtuals. And I don't see how that's really helping our society out.
Yeah, really good points. One thing that I definitely want to kind of tie in, because you talked a lot about what other countries are doing to kind of build their own infrastructure, and so kind of swing it back to the kind of economic development arm, starting with Subash here, talking about with business incentives. We've been able to attract businesses to, St. Louis, into the state as a whole. Can you speak to some of those incentives? What can we learn from these other strategies that we used in the past that we can use now to kind of grow this pharmaceutical manufacturing industry to create new opportunities for economic growth?
Yeah, Lynne touched on some of those, but essentially, there are state and local incentives, and so Missouri is very well, and our local partners are very well suited in lowering the operating costs of companies, either by the standard statutory programs or through incentives. So, for example, Missouri has a program called Missouri Works. It's a payroll benefit program. Basically, a company would get a certain percentage of its payroll back to them over the course of 5 years as part of an incentive to attract them to come here. That lowers their operating costs in terms of payroll. There are training programs, a program called Missouri One Start. So Karthik kind of talked about the workforce, and we acknowledge there are workforce challenges, not unique to Missouri, kind of a national issue, but there are training programs available, and there are funds for that. And so they're incredibly flexible programs for companies. So the community colleges have a play in this. They can even be used to relocate key individuals to Missouri, which is new this year or last fiscal year, a brand new program within Missouri One Start. So training and also recruitment, so trying to attract some of the people to work for various companies. So there are 3 kind of steps when it comes to workforce development programs. We also have, just by nature, Missouri is really manufacturing is one of our most active sectors. So manufacturers are already sales and use tax exempt on their equipment for manufacturing purposes. The inputs are sales tax exempt. The energy used is sales tax exempt. In some cases, the real estate can be sales tax exempt if there's another local incentive that Kevin's organization they're a pro at, the property tax abatement with Chapter 100. That the locals have the ability to abate real and personal property taxes, and that can add another layer of property tax exemption. So we do create a very, very favorable environment. The challenge, as Karthik has mentioned it, is getting people to work in this field. And so that's a whole, we could spend all day on that particular topic. I promise you, we have the ingredients for that, but we're missing one main ingredient, and that is individuals, Missourians, St. Louisans, interested in these careers. If we can get people who are interested in the career, we have all the infrastructure in place to train somebody up to get through it. The issue is, are they interested in that type of a career?
Yeah. And you brought up, again, several key points there. And Kevin, I'm going to swing it over to you because you talked about incentives, but also building, going back to Karthik's point about the entrepreneurship and innovation, kind of the St. Louis partnership. You have, again, like 5 or 6 different programs that you run all the time over there. Could you kind of highlight kind of some of the work that your team is doing that kind of feeds into the conversation right now in terms of workforce, providing incentives for businesses?
Well, Subash talked about the workforce incentives. At the local level, we do also have property tax abatement, machinery and equipment. It's not my department, but our business development group helps and facilitates that and works with all manner of company, large and small. So from an entrepreneurship standpoint, we have 4 incubators actually that we operate in and around the St. Louis region, 1 in Chesterfield, 1 in Lemay, 1 in Wellston, and 1 in 39 North, which is in Creve Coeur. And the only one of those that's sort of dedicated is the one in Creve Coeur, which is dedicated to ag tech. And entrepreneurship that's going on in those facilities is really the key driver. Opportunity to have startups and foster those startups, really create the environment where you can grow your business with aid, subsidized rents, and making it as easy as possible for companies to get their sea legs and really grow. And the hope is that they stay in these incubators for 2 to 3 or 5 years, get themselves established, and then graduate, but stay in the area, which is an incredible thing, because it's a lot easier to grow your own and have these startups from companies. You know, and many of the scientists that are at 39 North came out of Monsanto, came out of Mallinckrodt and others, and had ideas that they're able now to really bring to fruition. And so from an innovation and entrepreneurship standpoint, that we really do hone in on that, and then providing the incentives to help grow those companies.
Yeah. Entrepreneurship, making sure getting people really interested and excited about being in the space, kind of key drivers. And so back over to you. I want to take it a level deeper and specifically talk about underrepresented communities. We saw the numbers before, about 6% of the Black population being part of kind of like the bioscience area now. What are kind of your strategies that you're already doing to reach out to these underrepresented populations for these potential new or jobs that are coming, and quality control and all across the biosciences?
So kind of a variety of things. I think one key piece of that is strong community partnerships. When you look at the work that's happening at the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis, in partnership with Fresh Harvest 365, to expose individuals from inner city St. Louis to ag tech, biotech, and then placing them directly in well-paying positions with employers like Bayer, providing them those exposure opportunities through BioSTL's externship program, where individuals from these community partnerships have the opportunity to go and shadow and tour in employers like Millipore-Sigma and Thermo Fisher and Pfizer and Bayer and Donald Danforth Plant Science Center. I mean, that exposure is such a huge piece. And something that we're doing on the Illinois side and looking at opportunities for expanding over here to Missouri is providing these lab tech credentialing programs in the high schools. Madison High School, a severely underserved community in Illinois, and East St. Louis, where we're providing these hands-on skills training programs to high school students who generally don't have any interest in the sciences. I think most of us can agree that our high school science classes were not the most engaging. You're working in a group of 5 and only one person's doing the actual work. That's not what we're doing anymore. Now it's actually credentialing individuals on their own skills, the things that they're actually doing, and then giving them pathways to employment fresh out of high school. I think we see now more than ever that a 4-year university is not the right pathway for every individual, but providing them those skills to get into an employer that may help them get that 4-year degree without going into further debt. I think college debt is another huge issue that we see, and it's a big reason why individuals aren't going to 4-year universities anymore. And so providing them pathways to employers who will then invest further in their futures, it's helping everybody. And reaching them when they're younger and showing them that there's more to science than your boring science classes in high school. Showing them that there's more than just the lab. There's the manufacturing, the quality control, sales even. There's so much that goes into the industry, and exposing individuals to it at an earlier age in an engaging way. With SIUE's developed a portable escape room with a story to tell of how the sciences can be used to solve problems. And they get exposed to it in a fun, engaging way. I think it's that exposure piece is really what we're doing and what's working. And now we have more students than we can possibly train, which is where working with other institutions come in. embedding these programs into a high school system. So we're training high school science teachers to do these programs so that they can credential their own individuals in partnership with the universities and community colleges, and showing that, you know, these base skills aren't only good for pharmaceutical manufacturing, but they also are for the clinical, you know, medical side of lab sciences, and really making it a whole platter of options in the industry that individuals otherwise probably don't even know exist. And so that exposure is really where we're putting that focus and seeing results.
Yeah, great points. And I know our closing speaker, Senator Brian Williams and his team with Rob and Company, I know they've been talking a lot about multiple pathways to getting students, especially in underserved communities, into these high-paying jobs. And so it's great to kind of get that insight. So again, switching gears again, I want to look to the future a little bit, and these questions go for Karthik and for Lynne. So looking at scaling up API manufacturing in Missouri, and what do you see as some of the maybe the challenges and what are the opportunities that you see in that space for you, Karthik? I know I keep giving you maybe some of the doom and gloom, challenging questions, but you're still good at them.
No, I think, you know, I would rather look at it as, you know, what can be done to move forward. I think we've talked enough about workforce challenge, but it is a key part of this whole thing, because the scalability of that is so vital to expanding. If you don't have the workforce, you're not going to be able to do what you intend to do. So we are, for example, we are partnering with BioSTL and working through an externship program. That is a good pathway because, you know, people that are either in high school or just graduated high school, they may not be familiar with STEM career opportunities, whether it's in production or in quality control, quality assurance as a technician, or maintenance, et cetera. And having an opportunity for them to come and do an internship at a company, get exposed to the opportunities, get exposed to a certain level of training and rigor that's required in pharmaceutical, I think is a good first step. You need to build that nursery and that production chain in order to build enough of the workforce with the right level of base skills that are needed to work in pharmaceuticals. For those who work in pharmaceutical, it needs a certain profile of individuals to work in operations. You need to be very disciplined, detail-oriented, good documentation skills, reasonable amount of math skills, et cetera. So it is a certain set of individuals that will eventually end up working there. But this allows for people to explore the opportunity, get trained in it, and see if it's a good career path for them. So I think that's an important next step. I think meaning all of us have to really capitalize on that, and companies have to figure out how they can partake in these externship programs and start, helping build that baseline foundational workforce, which can then come into their companies and become full-time employees. It is an attractive career, but we need to go through that process. I think that's really the first step. The investment, this also gives companies a little bit of a risk reduction in the sense that, for example, when we hire somebody, it takes us that has no pharma experience, it takes us 8 to 9 months to get them to be what we call foundationally trained, meaning they can do their basic jobs without oversight or with minimal oversight. That's a significant investment for us. If somebody then leaves in 3 months after that, that's a huge loss for us. We can't be going through those cycles time after time. So building this resource pool within the St. Louis area is a very important thing that will help with this projected growth. I think that's an important thing. The second aspect is, as I mentioned earlier, API, generic drug products, ultimately it comes down to cost. What is the price? What is the cost of goods sold? That's what the name of the game is. And if we're wanting to compete in that space, I think it's important that the right kind of incentives are in place, and incentives could include federal as well as state, city incentives, whether it's tax abatement or real estate or other aspects. But it is important that there is no significant entry barrier in terms of cost, because all of these are high-risk initiatives. You invest a lot in building, in infrastructure and equipment to build a facility, and if you're not able to be competitive in the marketplace, it's not going to get you far. And cost is at the root of the generics marketplace, whether it's essential medicines, critical care, or more complex products. And more companies are coming into the generic field. So I think that's another important thing, is like the public-private partnership. What kind of incentives are there for companies to grow, add new production lines to expand, et cetera. So I would see those as things we need to focus on collectively in terms of sort of helping move forward in this area and scaling up. Doing 1 or 2 or 3 products is a really good start, because we're starting from a position of disadvantage, I would say. But I think once we get to the point where we do have a certain amount of critical mass, then we can build from there. The third piece I would add is that we need to make sure that it's an integrated proposition. Whatever we do, we don't just do bits and pieces like an API or a drug product or whatever. Yeah. It has to be an integrated value chain opportunity. So starting with key starting materials all the way to finished goods manufacturing. If we spread the value chain around, if we do bits and pieces, that is not going to help with the ultimate goal of lower cost. Because the more you scatter the supply chain, the higher the cost. So I think that's another important initiative for St. Louis as well. How can we build a more integrated value chain so that from start to finish, we have a reliable system? The products we manufacture from not just the KSM, but from raw material all the way to finished product. The only reason we do it is, or 2 reasons, is for cost advantage and for control over quality. I think those are important things as we embark on a much larger scale of manufacturing in St. Louis. So I would say those are 3 things to maybe consider. And I wouldn't say they're challenges. I think these are things we need to really be focused on to build that kind of a model going forward.
Yeah. I'll rephrase and say, instead of challenges, opportunities.
Opportunities.
So, Lynne, the same question for you. I know we've talked about there's idle capacity that we need to fill, but with these investments, hopefully we can do that, but also we need to scale. And so for you, you're also bringing in new manufacturing kind of infrastructure from fill to finish.
Right.
And so kind of talk about, what do you see the impact on the St. Louis area that you're going to have with the new production, and where do you kind of see the trajectory of that over the next couple of years?
Well, one, going to what you're saying, we actually have looked at, for our own facility, is doing an end-to-end solution of, API all the way through, to the end point. But what we've found in the marketplace is that if we just focus on, if we have our partners in the API Intervention Center through APIC, if somebody else is making those and we can solidify those starting materials for us, that we can take it through the whole development pathway, from not only just developing generics, starting with reduced cost API, because it's created through continuous manufacturing, that our final product will be less and that we can handle doing that. And but one of the things that we're doing is to do the whole value chain within clinical trials. So we are going to have job opportunities for people to work through clinical trials. We're going to do clinical trial management. So there's like repackaging. That's part of the pharma industry that we haven't talked about. We're going to be offering repackaging solutions, and those are entry-level jobs, for people to come in through our facility and then see if they are detailed-oriented individuals, that we can bring them through our program, and if we work collaboratively with the different training programs that are out there, that we can take somebody that we know and trust and add value to their life in creating a corporate structure and a corporate culture that they want to stay with us and not jump ship.
Right.
So, we are looking at, in the first 3 years, of adding 72 jobs, and at 5 years, about 150. And when I look at my competitors that are out there, at 10 years, they have about 400 people that they employ. And we have a pathway within our system that you can start on one end, and if you can work your way up through quality control systems and have those opportunities to go get the training that you need. So does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Is what
yeah.
you're looking for? Is that's what we're doing to impact. And I truly do believe in internships. And if it gives each person, it gives the individual an opportunity to learn whether they really want this, or they may come in on an internship and see another job opportunity that they can't really be exposed at, whether it's on the university level or if it's on, a vocational person. Once you get into a corporation and into the workforce, and if you're doing an internship, it really opens up your eyes into all the opportunities within that organization, and having the opportunity to do an internship and then switching over. And that way you have someone who feels valued and has a commitment towards that path. So, having repeated internships, sharing resources to develop that person, and then they have a greater willingness to stay on. You put into them, and they will put back into you. It's a two-way street between an employer and an employee. And hopefully, you don't have that cost of losing an employee, because it's detrimental to a startup to constantly train somebody and then have them just go to the guy next door because it's $1 more. $1 more an hour can mean a lot when you're on a vocational level, right? So whatever GCM Pharma can do to retain its employees and create a culture where they want to stay. One of the things I was actually talking to Deborah about was, with the area that we are in, there's nothing there. There's no restaurants for the employees to go out. There's nothing there. But if we extend ourselves outside of our own unit and look at our employees as people, and what do those people need? They're going to need childcare. So I was talking to Deborah about, okay, what can we do to subsidize the childcare centers in the area, work with the universities, and have those students go over, get their training, get their training in a live session. My employees can, or anybody's, because we have Mallinckrodt right down the street, they can drop their child off, and now you're close by, because after work, your real life starts. So if you can encompass that in your company culture, that we're here for you here and we're here for you outside of here, I think that does help with retention. So if we can create Missouri as that environment, St. Louis as that environment, that we're looking at the whole person, not just the 9 to 5 of that person, and invest in them professionally and invest in them outside of it, it would help.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I have another question. We'll start with Becca, and then whoever wants to answer this question as well. Then we can open it up for some audience questions. But when working with businesses, when you're trying to work with them to either scale up their current workforce, scale up talent for them in general, kind of what are some of the best strategies that you use to actually engage with them? Because what we see a lot of is, or questions of, there needs to be skin in the game from all sides in order to get this workforce. And so could you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think first and foremost is getting that face time. Sitting down and having a conversation not through a computer goes a long way, and it's really difficult to do now. We're really in the age of that computer is between us. And so pushing for those in-person meetings, reviewing current job descriptions and seeing where is the degree or certification, maybe not as necessary on day one. How can they get that while working here with you? get through a training program quicker because they're seeing this day to day and able to apply it. And again, then that employer is putting the investment in their staffing. So it's something that Sentio is looking at doing, the apprenticeship models, where you bring somebody in who has little exposure to the career, and you're investing on day one of saying, we understand we're meeting you where you're at today, and we're going to help you get to where you want to be in a way that benefits us as an employer, a training provider who generally is going to have a more successful experience as a training provider when the individual is able to apply it on a day-to-day basis, and for an individual who doesn't need a job a year or 2 or 4 from now, but needs a job today. And so we're seeing employers who accept that and see that as a way to foster that retention. The earn while you learn models are a huge benefit to everybody involved, but one of the key pieces that workforce development pushes is that they're there for retention. That investment that you put on day one, and then when you start looking at the full picture, everything you said there was, it's something that we have a lot of different projects that are looking at that in a lot of different industries and how you can cross-industry train. Not just have an opportunity for training individuals in this industry, but also in early childhood, in hospitality,
Right.
As you have people traveling in for different positions as well. And again, that opportunity for the cross-industry collaboration, finding employers who want to do that can be challenging. And I think it's exposing those employers to successful models. And so that's a lot of what we do, is find a good model that we know works, even if it's not in the industry that you're applying it to, but it could be related. Manufacturing, to me, when I'm looking at it from a workforce development perspective, is a lot of similar skills. So how can we pull an individual from one portion of manufacturing who has really good detail orientation and who wants that growth opportunity beyond where they're at currently, and how can we bring them in and foster their growth? And so I think it's that cross-industry collaboration that intrigues people now. Every employer we talk to about that opportunity, especially when you're talking to HR, which can be the most difficult people to work with. I think we've all experienced that in many senses. Everybody's in the mindset of getting creative right now. And so setting creative examples for how you can bring in new people, for how you can grow without those costs of training. Training is expensive. Onboarding a new employee can be one of the most expensive pieces of running a company. And so working with your workforce boards, exposing them to these other funding opportunities. So we bring in, we have federal funds, non-traditional workforce development funds like the grant that I work on from Department of Labor. But there's also traditional Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act funding for employers that can help offset the cost of training individuals, specifically individuals who are coming from an underserved community, whether that's a dislocated worker, somebody with an intellectual disability, or people coming from a low income situation. There are other subsidies for bringing in those individuals that can help offset the cost of their training. And so informing employers of funds that we know are out there, but the employers, it's not readily told to you that there are these other, forms of training your staff in-house. And so that's, exposing, as much as you need to expose an individual, exposing employers to the different opportunities and the ways to get creative has been really successful.
Oh, great. I do want to slightly alter the question, and really one last question before we can kick it over to audience questions, over to Subash and Kevin, is in terms of what Michael actually touched on, is, and they're going to have their event in October, they're going to dive more into this, but what businesses are looking for, or what assistance businesses are looking for in terms of if they're going to build a new business in a particular area, kind of what supports for like family and things of that nature that they may want to see in that industry, or investments they want to see. Subash, starting with you, can you tell us, just from your conversations with businesses who are looking to expand, relocate, what are kind of the key things they're looking for that St. Louis can set themselves apart from other places to relocate or expand?
So we've talked about a lot of them, the workforce availability. They look for strategic location. we talked about something we call soft infrastructure, which is, the fact that, so I consider API Innovation Center part of the soft infrastructure, right? The part of the ecosystem, that's something that they look for. The business climate. So, for example, in Missouri, we have a AAA bond rating, one of the most diverse economies in the nation. And so the reason why that is important is when a company is going to invest, and Lynne and Karthik can maybe attest to this, but when a company is going to make a big investment, it is, one, it's not a decision that they make often, right? It's a decision that impacts families, it impacts their supply chain, it impacts employees. So they want to do this in a low risk environment. So how can they mitigate risk? So that has been one of the selling points that we talk about with Missouri is risk mitigation. Because you don't have our AAA bond rating, why that matters, and we have it from all 3 credit rating agencies, and we've had it for 50 years. Why it matters is if we're making an offer to GCM or whatever, that offer is going to be there. Not every state can make that claim. So risk mitigation is something that I feel like we don't talk enough about, but that is what we see all the time, is how can we mitigate our risk? Because the reality is the clients that we attract here, they could be successful if they do their search right. They could be successful in 2 or 3 different locations.
Very true.
And what is going to put us over the edge? And so there's the whole feel. Deborah leads our project management team. I think she makes Lynne feel welcome here. That's part of it. The whole attitude behind what you all are doing here with the API Innovation Center, the interest and the support, the support infrastructure. So Karthik talked a little bit about this, and so did Becca. What are the things that can serve and be successful behind the scenes? So is there, for example, support services that they're going to contract with? Are those here? If their machine breaks down, who's here to repair that machine? There's a lot of that goes into it, and we call that part of the support infrastructure as well.
Right. And Kevin, anything to add?
Not much to add to that. That's but I think one of the things that we haven't touched on, and it may come out in the questions, is really telling the story of what API is, what advanced manufacturing is, what the opportunities are. It's not necessarily a branding and marketing campaign, but in many respects it is, because people just don't realize advanced manufacturing means a lot of things to a lot of different people. And how do you target the message to the particular audiences you're trying to reach? And there are various audiences that you do need to speak to in order to get people to buy into advanced manufacturing and API. It's many years in the making, and a little bit of history is instructive here. Partnership that I'm a part of started working on the Advanced Manufacturing Innovation Center that's going up in North St. Louis 9 years ago now, and I was part of that effort, and we started a group called the Regional Advanced Manufacturing Partnership to help facilitate that, incorporated it into the St. Louis City and St. Louis County Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, and began telling that story about here are the opportunities, both from an employment standpoint and an employer standpoint, to really grow this cluster. And we've got a couple of years left on this Build Back Better Regional Challenge to really define a strategy, and I would encourage API to continue to be a part of that effort as we think about advanced manufacturing and really growing a robust cluster as we have in some of the other areas that we've discussed.
Right. So opening it up for any questions from the audience. Or Doug?
I was thinking about, as Tony was talking about the challenges that we have with regards to not making pharmaceuticals in the United States, do we really need to make pharmaceuticals cheaper than India or China, or do we just need to be able to make pharmaceuticals at a certain price when the need arises? Because that would change how would we go about training, what type of equipment we would put in. Like, for example, sterile filling. Do you want to put the fastest, lowest cost filling system in, or would you want to put a versatile system that can switch from one type of package to another when the need arises? And so, I think that's something we really need to think about, because, like, for example, you may not be able to get someone who can train to make chicken McNuggets and then Big Macs and then French fries or whatever. You may want to put a robot that could switch easily to do that, but then the people clean and the equipment, so they're constantly doing the same thing over, right? So I think those are some things that we should kind of think about. What problem are we actually trying to solve?
So may I speak to that?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at flexibility, there are systems that have that opportunity that you can flex from, whether the finished dose comes out in a vial, the finished dose comes out in a syringe. So those systems are there, and having to train those employees to be able to do that, and having redundancies within your facility, so you can switch if a line goes down. Well, your next room has the very same thing, and that's what we're doing at GCM. And it's going to drive down our costs in a number of different ways, as well as our employees they don't have to be trained on 6 different units. So that drives down our cost on training that individual. But when you're looking at, okay, so if we don't get the Cadillac or the Lamborghini of filling equipment, there's a cost to that. And I have purchased at my last facility a filling system that was out of China. It was a tenth of the price. The metal bent. The unit broke. Servicing of that unit was a nightmare. It wasn't worth it. So the amount of cost that you have to put into building one of these, our facility is going to cost $175 million to get up and off the ground. So standing one of these things up is a long process, and it's an expensive process. So, and the amount of regulation that they put behind it. So there's a balance of driving down the cost per unit on it by, how much it costs to stand up your facility and your background costs. And we were talking about AAA ratings and stuff, and I don't know if there is any way for us to drive down and give more favorable rates, for loans for senior debt. That would be a huge incentive. But now you're incorporating another industry. Okay, you're incorporating the banking, the banking industry, the financial industry, to be able to make, Missouri more attractive. How can we move forward in a way? Can we issue bonds that are at a lower rate? What can we do to attract companies to come here? Because it's an enormous investment to come here. So does that kind of answer your question? Like, there are things you can do to drive down costs, but there's a caveat to that.
I guess what I was getting at is, say we have the capacity to make a drug that can compete with India or China. Now you both have excess capacity, so that's going to bring down the market price. And so then the one who wins is the patient, but then whoever's the lowest cost is going to kill the other one, right? And so maybe that's not what we want to do. We just want to, when there's a drug shortage, we want to be able to switch and make that drug at a certain price, that we can actually make it and make it at a certain price. And that would change the calculus of what we're actually trying to do. That maybe we're not trying to be the lowest cost producer. We just want to be able to make a lot of different products with the same equipment, and that would require a lot of versatility in our ability to operate and the type of equipment that we put in, versus putting, high-speed, lowest cost equipment that maybe China would put in, right, to make the lowest cost. So that's kind of what I was getting at. So.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. That's an intriguing thought. The cost of manufacturing is not just obviously the direct cost of the equipment or labor or things like that. There's a substantial GMP cost and a substantial regulatory cost that sits on top of that. And that is a bigger challenge, in my opinion, than trying to figure out the direct cost of goods sold. We manufacture APIs here in St. Louis from fully integrated from start to end. On direct cost, we can compete with other manufacturers overseas if we're smart enough about how we run our operations. But the cost of the regulatory layer and the GMP layer is, in many cases, some of the bigger challenges. And that's probably not just unique here domestically. You see a lot of, some of the shortages that are occurring in essential medicine list is really not truly a supply chain shortage. It's just companies exiting because they just find it not economical enough to operate in those products. A few of the oncology products are in shortage primarily because manufacturers don't want to touch it. There's cents on the dollar margin, and they're looking at, I'm putting enormous amount of effort into making this product. I'm not getting the returns on it, so I'm exiting. So there is that pressure. There is the market price pressure that is there that I don't know whether that can be relieved or not. I think that's a bigger challenge. Most of these essential medicines, most of these other generics, you know, the first time a generic comes in, you get a 60% price drop. And then when the second, third, fourth, fifth come in, you know, you're looking at, you know, a substantial price competition. So that's the reality of the world. But I see your point in terms of, are there categories of products where we don't have to be in this kind of race? So I think that's an intriguing thought.
Well, I was thinking that if you start to get supply and the price is good, why make it? Just switch to another product, and you don't die with that. If you're just specific in that product, you're going to die if you can't beat your competitors.
So a couple of quick thoughts here on that, just to kind of add. When we've had conversations with customers, there's kind of two things that if the two pharmaceuticals are close in price, what's going to be the distinguishing factor if ours is slightly more expensive? It's reliability of supply and quality. And so if we can ensure quality and from end to end, especially using advanced manufacturing technology, having it in one location, like right here in Missouri, and work with a partner who is right here domestically, they're willing to pay that extra amount in order to get that certification that they know their product is made here, high quality, and again, availability. So I think that might also kind of go to your question. So looking at the time, I do want to ask just one last quick question and a quick round robin for final thoughts. Anything that you wanted to leave with the audience on kind of the economic opportunity here with investments in API and all the way down to AMTs and finished drug product, anything in the workforce development, and on really the future of pharmaceutical manufacturing within the state. So we'll just go with Kevin and make our way down.
You know, I think as I dovetailed off the last question, you know, telling the story is an important component. But I also mentioned that making sure that we have opportunities for diverse and distressed populations to be able to get into this, and it's got to be a part of the pipeline creation. I mean, K through 6 through 12, those who are 25 and over who've been left on the sidelines, letting them know about the opportunities, and that you don't have to have these expensive degrees. You can get in, have certification. You know, there's a advanced manufacturing facility being built at Southwestern Illinois College. It's already finished. There's another one being built at Florissant Valley. We're building in North St. Louis an advanced manufacturing innovation center. And so stitching those things together, again, getting back to collaboration and partnership is really the key to driving this.
Subash?
You know, just a quick, vision moment here. Because we can't stop talking about Missouri, I have to tell you, just a fun fact, Missouri is the population center of the United States. So if you had to distribute a product to every single human being in the nation, there's statistically no better place to do that than Missouri. And when's the last time we had to distribute something to every single human in the nation? It wasn't that long ago.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
Good fun fact.
That is a great fun fact. I would say that I second everything that Kevin said of just the work's happening here. We have such a great opportunity. We have a workforce need here, but we also have people here who want jobs and maybe just don't have the information on how to get them. They don't know that the jobs are for them. And I think that we have, a lot of great community organizations throughout the St. Louis Metro to start doing that exposure experience. And fortunately, we are getting the word out there. And so I think it's really just a matter of time before we have this booming workforce in this industry.
Yeah, just to conclude on the study, I think the study is a great starting point. I think it sets up a good foundation to build on, and it covers all the key components I think we need to focus on as a city, as a state, to kind of take this to the next step and to a more scalable structure. Immediate next steps, I think the momentum needs to continue, as well as kind of the entrepreneurial energy around taking this forward. I think the public-private partnership is a key factor in making this work. This is not something that's going to be funded by private equity or things like that. This has to be a public-private partnership, as well as collaboration among various entities here, private and governmental entities, to address all of these components, equipment, raw materials, services, workforce development, banking, funding, all of those things. But I think the key next steps are to focus really on keeping the momentum going.
I'd have to say, all the things that we've talked about and all the background work that you guys have done to build the infrastructure here is definitely what attracted us, because we were looking at other locations. The central aspect of St. Louis to the country was another part of the geographical, highlighting those. And then I really think that having a team for cross collaborations, continuing with these kind of efforts, bringing industry leaders together, sitting down, doing planning based on what was found in the study, and making benchmarks, making 3, 5, 10-year benchmarks. Who else do we need to bring into this forum to make those things happen, to make it more attractive to come to Missouri? Like with the financial aspect, I mean, we don't have somebody here. We need to bring those other things here so we can have the ancillary services. Biopharma is a very, very big thing, and it's not just, the API and the finished product. There's a considerable amount of jobs that can be vocational tech jobs to come service the equipment, and having those people come into the mix and bringing them here to work on the forward game plan would be very, very helpful, because it really is a small community. You link with somebody in biopharma, you just linked yourself with the other, but still, it's a small community. And having those people join on each other's boards so we can have input. All right, we need this. This is what we're seeing in our subsector. How can I tell you I need that person trained? And what can I do to help that train a person in our facility that can come to you? Because they all jump. There's something that we're going to do about that. But I think cross-collaboration is a huge thing that we need to continue to work on.
Right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's give our panel a brief hand here. Thank you. So with that, we're going to be transitioning to our closing remarks. So I will invite Tony Sodella back up to the stage.
You guys all come on. Great, thanks. Move this back. Well, thank you. I want to thank the panel for that excellent discussion, raising a lot of different elements that we need to reflect as our path going forward. One of the things that I wanted to share with you, you've heard a lot about the API Innovation Center and its focus on developing medicines and APIs. But what you haven't heard is our commitment, unrelenting commitment to develop talent and people in the region. We recognize this is the lifeblood of our industry growing and thriving. You heard the panel make several comments about creative thought in this area. right? Being innovative and giving more exposure to this as a sector in the field. So I'm really proud to announce that next year, first quarter, we'll be launching a new creative, innovative initiative. Will be the Cohort Pathways Initiative that will bring students from high school, from diverse communities, into the API Innovation Center, in the research labs at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, to be exposed to jobs in this sector. We have a unique ability to do this as the center. See, we bring medicines from beginning to end to the market with new technology. And the vision is to bring individuals from beginning to end so that they know when they start at the lab, maybe as a lab technician or as an intern, that they already have a job with the company that we're putting the equipment in that's going to produce the medicines. Because that's the investment, contracting, and partnering that the API Innovation Center has. We see it as a unique opportunity. We're going to start small, in small scale, and we're looking forward to many, such as Rebecca and the rest that were on stage, to partner, develop this innovative model to create and develop the talent in the region. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker for closing remarks, Senator Brian Williams. I want you to know APIC and its $1.2 billion economic stimulus of the region would not at all be possible without the work of Senator Williams. We owe him a great amount of gratitude. Very early on, when the vision and the concept was constructed, we engaged with Senator Williams, provided an overview of the opportunity for jobs and talent and economic prosperity, not just in St. Louis, but in North St. Louis. And he embraced it. He was open-minded, innovative in his thought process, and saw the opportunity. And lo and behold now, after a federal contract, significant other fundings, as well as the Center's economic impact, we are seeing both his vision and our vision realized. You know, he's been a champion from the very beginning, and himself incredible advocate for the region. So he's a proud representative of the 14th District in St. Louis County. As I said, if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't exist. He's been a strong advocate for Missouri's advancement in pharmaceutical manufacturing and our first champion. From a public service background, Senator Williams is the first black male in 2 decades to serve in the Missouri Senate. He has a background in government and public health policy. Senator Williams currently serves on an influential Senate Appropriations Committee and is co-lead of the bipartisan House and Senate Legislative Innovation and Technology Caucus. And he plays a critical role in Missouri's Chamber of Commerce and Missouri's Technology Alliance. He's had significant accomplishment, including passing key reforms in healthcare access, which made him a perfect advocate and supporter of the API Innovation Center, criminal justice, and police accountability. He also secured $98 million for North St. Louis County projects. $98 million, a significant impact on the region, including being a champion for the $10 million in the API active pharmaceutical ingredients, as in the API Innovation Center, that we received through the Missouri Technology Corporation. Lo and behold, not only with his legislative and government efforts, significant community contributor as well. In addition to this legislative work, he's also been involved in various advisory roles, including one that really is dear to me, as my daughter is a clinical psychologist, working with People's Health Center, where he helped develop behavioral health services for underserved children, and she runs one of the adolescence programs in the nation. So I'm very proud of that and to see that as well. Great honor to welcome for closing remarks, Senator Brian Williams.
Could we please give a round of applause for Tony Sordella again? Thank you. Now, all of those things that Tony said about me, the coolest one was the fact that his daughter has dedicated her career to being a child psychologist and is making efforts to ensure that the future of our region, our state, and our country is in the best hands that it possibly can be. So thank your daughter for the work that she does. She is truly the real champion today. I also want to thank you all for taking time to learn about the innovation that we have to admit is very, very convoluted and really make you think about a lot of things, don't it? It's really, really fascinating. I was telling Gerren in the back, he wears a lot of hats on top of being a part of this phenomenal organization, but he is now a pronounced moderator. And if you're into fitness, you can catch one of his Orange Theory classes on a very, very early day on the weekend. And then also, could we please recognize such a tremendous panel that came out and talked about not only this innovation, but their roles and their respective capacities that will not only make our region, but our state a champion throughout the entire world. The API Innovation Center, of course, Washington University, as well as everyone else here today. Now, this morning, we had an opportunity to hear about the critical impact at the API innovation. And from the very beginning, I've been proud, as Tony said, to advocate for this center in the Missouri Senate, but it's also incredible to see the strides that have been made to this day. Sometimes small things that we perceive get extremely big results. And for example, today we learned just 6 drug molecules have created more than $360 million in local economic activity. That's a positive sign of what is possible, as well as what's possible for the many years ahead of us. The long-term goal of bringing the production of 350 medicines back to America has the potential to generate nearly $18 billion in the economic activity right here in the Show Me state. That's a big deal, y'all. Now, to help achieve this goal, I'm particularly proud that API Innovation Center will now create 125 new jobs in the pharmaceutical manufacturing sector with a focus on providing opportunities for historically disadvantaged communities. This initiative is positioning our state, and in particular, St. Louis, to become a national leader. And that national leader would be right in pharmaceutical innovation. We'll also leverage advanced manufacturing technologies, and we're also reducing our dependence on foreign supply chains and making Missouri a hub for cutting-edge pharmaceutical production. Bringing these jobs and products back to America is not just about dollars and cents. It's about securing the health and safety for our communities by ensuring that we have reliable access to essential medications. A safer America begins simply at home. And with these efforts, we're making our communities and our families more safe and secure. Meanwhile, by fostering a diverse and inclusive workforce, we're creating new jobs, classes, and specialized training programs, career opportunities in advanced manufacturing, and giving people from all walks of life a pathway into high-paying careers. Those careers will also consist of high-tech jobs, as well as folks working in research and studying innovation. I'm particularly passionate about how this initiative would engage underserved communities, as Tony said. It'll also provide critical outreach and education to build a pipeline for talent for the future. And when you look around this community, there are so many people that would benefit from this that look like every single one of us. In closing, I want to recognize a lot of partners that API has been able to create, and one of those partners is the University of Missouri, St. Louis. We have Chris Spilling here, who is a chemist by training and has had an opportunity to live out some of his lifelong pleasures by being able to engage with this. So it's been really exciting to see UMSL and his leadership and Kristen Sobolik and her team become such a tremendous partner. And for those that are not familiar with UMSL, it is the only public research institution in this region. I also look forward to continuing to champion this work as we further establish Missouri as a center of biopharmaceutical excellence. Together, we're not only going to build a more resilient supply chain, but we'll create a legacy of innovation. And that'll bring opportunity and growth. And it'll benefit many generations to come. So let's invest in the future of Missouri in initiatives like the API Innovation Center that strengthen our economy, improve health outcomes, and make our state a national leader in pharmaceutical manufacturing. Thank you all so much for the opportunity to close out this program. I hope you all really learned that Missouri is moving forward, and we're moving forward into the future, and the future remains nothing short of bright. Thank you so much, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That's a perfect way to close. There's nothing more that can be added. And I think the excitement that you heard in Senator Williams' voice is just tremendous. And I want to thank Senator Williams for being here. In fact, Senator Williams will be right back here on this very stage 2 weeks from today, participating in the event that I mentioned earlier on how we can better attract and retain talent here in St. Louis. And so when we think about everything that we've learned this morning, there are a couple of things that really rise to the top. Connection, cooperation, collaboration, inclusivity, innovation, and most importantly, as it relates to where we're going to go next, action. It's really important that we don't just consume this information and walk out of here feeling really great about what we learned, but don't really take actionable steps to implement and try and achieve what we know is right here before us. So I speak on behalf of Tony, I speak on behalf of APIC, I speak on behalf, I think, of everyone who cares about the future of this region to say, let's take this information and let's connect it, let's cooperate with each other, let's collaborate, and let's drive inclusive impact for change for our community. So with that, thank you so much to everyone who's been here, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.